open my big mouth. So yeah, we're talking about words and the power that our mouths have. Again, my name is Garrison. I'm the Next Step pastor at the Colleyville campus, and Luke is away, so I'm filling in this morning. But I've been married to my wife for 8 years. We have 2 kids, and it's talking about words, and it's interesting how God pairs you up with people and puts people into your life. Well, and because my wife's someone who, she has a maximum amount of words in a day that she can speak, whereas I have a minimum amount of words that I need to speak and get out. How many of you are the minimum people? You have to talk. There's a minimum amount of words you need to say a day. Raise your hand. Come on. Yes. Okay. Yes, Victoria. Thank you. How many of you all have a maximum amount of words? Okay. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Totally. So there's times that I come home and my wife will tell me I'm done talking for the day, but I'll listen, but I'm done talking. I'm like, okay. Our daughter's like me, so she talks a lot, all day long. But no, so for example, sometimes our mouths can get us in trouble. You know this. Example, not too long ago, we were coming out of a restaurant and we got into the car and I looked and there was an older couple walking out of the restaurant, and she had her hand in his arm, and they were walking to the car. And I looked over at Laura. My wife. I said, "Hey, that is so awesome." I said, "I want that to be us one day. I think that's so cute. I love that. That's going to be us, right? You know, all right." And so I was like, "I'm going to ask them how long. I'm going to ask them how long they've been married." And Laura's like, "She's like, no, come on, let's just go. Come on." I'm like, no. She's not for talking with strangers, but I am. So I get out. I'm like, oh, real quick. So I get out and I'm like, hey, excuse me. My wife and I, we just saw both of you. We think that's just so. We think it's so awesome. I just have to ask, how long have you both been married? And she looks at me and with a weird face and said, he's my father. There's no coming back. There's coming back from that. Just, oh, okay. I am so sorry. Turn around. Get in the car, and of course, she's just laughing hysterically, right? Like, we're going home, right? But no, you know, right? Rushing to conclusions can lead to regret. And oftentimes, when we assume of somebody and why they do the things that they do and make conclusions about the actions that they do, oftentimes it can lead to issues. Craig Rochelle recently in the past said he had this quote. He's a pastor. He said, "We are critical of what we don't understand." Critical of what we don't understand. I discovered this recently when we during plane flights. And before children, when we would be in a plane and we would hear, a baby or a toddler just, cry uncontrollably, like we kind of bared with it a little bit, but there was a little part of, us when we're like walking in, we're like, want to sit away from the children, right? We all do that, right? Well, now, we were on a flight and my daughter cried for the entire hour we were on the flight, right? And so now when I get on a flight and I hear a child scream and cry, my heart breaks for the parent. I'm not annoyed at all. I just hurt for them, right? As I'm sitting and listening, because I've experienced, right? I've experienced what they're experiencing themselves. I understand what they're experiencing. So it's not anger that rises, it's empathy. Like I said, old saying is true, right? We don't fully understand someone until we've walked a mile in their shoes. But see, because empathy is created by shared experience, and it brings a unity that criticism or unwanted advice could never accomplish. But is there a way that we can create an empathy amongst people and amongst us without having the shared experience? James, he's the brother of Jesus, and he gives some great advice in his letter to Christians that were living all over the land at the time. And he writes this in his letter. It says, understand, my dear brothers and sisters. He opens this letter. Understand, my dear brothers and sisters. Before we go any further, before we get to his practical advice, we just have to stop there and just highlight what a monumental sentence this is. Of course, he's writing in the first century, and in fact that he's addressing it to men and women was huge. In fact, he's just modeling what he experienced and witnessed himself by his brother Jesus. of how Jesus elevated the status of women to be equal with men, unlike anyone else ever in history. The women's rights movement didn't start in the mid-1800s with women's suffrage. It began in the first century with Jesus, and how Jesus went out of his way to talk to a Samaritan woman in the heat of day. That was in John 4, when he spoke with and forgave the adulterous woman when everyone else rejected her. And then in Luke 19, when he makes provisions for his mother to be taken care of after his death by appointing the Apostle John as her caregiver. Jesus did more to elevate the status of women more than anyone else at that time. And it's reflected in how his disciples are now addressing the people of the day as well. Dear brothers and sisters. Let's continue on here. Dear brothers and sisters, you must be all quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. I love the one-liner that says that people who fly into a rage always make crash landings. And I think for you, I think if we could look at our anger, of how it's affected us in the past, unchecked anger has a long reputation of ending and hurting relationships, severing ties with families, ending jobs, creating emotional scars in children, and even landing people in prison. Recent psychologists have discovered and studied anger that they've determined that anger is a secondary emotion. And that anger is a reaction to an initial feeling we initially experience. So it's a reaction to either protect or to numb what we're experiencing in the moment. For example, I imagine if we did an autopsy on the times of your past when you became angry, you would discover a deeper feeling that was at the cause of your anger. For maybe you felt disrespected or unloved by a spouse. Maybe you felt overlooked by an employer. You felt worthless. Maybe you felt like a failure when a kid came home, right, and gave another bad report, another bad grade. Felt embarrassed with people around you. You felt helpless of the situation. And so what you do is, instead of stopping and seeking to understand what's happening on the inside, you react in anger to control the situation or to numb the feeling that you're experiencing, such as pain, loneliness, worthlessness, and the list goes on. And the words and actions that are said in seconds when angry oftentimes takes months or even years to repair. That's why the teachings of James is so practical when we put it into practice, that we should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Stephen Covey, he's author and speaker. He tells this story in one of his books. He was on a subway train, and he looked over, and there was a father with 3 young children, and the children were just running crazy on the subway train, up and down, yelling and screaming. The father was just sitting there doing nothing. And as Stephen looked around, he saw other passengers on the plane or the train just getting annoyed and giving him dirty looks and looking up from the books and looking at him. And eventually, after a while, after them not exiting off the next stop, one aggravated woman gets up and walks over and says to him, "Would you get control of your children? They're causing chaos in this train." And the man just sat there and looked up with a face, and he said, "You know, lady, normally I would, but we're just returning from the hospital and got news that my wife, their mother, just passed away from cancer." And the woman, all of a sudden, her anger turned into empathy because she understood. She understood. He later goes on to write, "Seek first to understand, to be understood." We see this often all the times in relationships where we want to be heard. We want to be the first one to be understood. And so in those moments, right, we get frustrated, and when we see another person not understanding where we're coming from or what we're saying. We raise our voices, we get aggressive, we interrupt when the other person is speaking. Maybe some of us have even said out loud in frustration, "You're just not hearing me," right? Oftentimes we'll freeze the other person out emotionally and not talk to them because we want them to understand the pain that you're feeling. And none of that has ever brought any good. When my wife and I first got married, we saw a counselor once a month. And by the way, I would encourage anyone to create the practice of seeing a therapist of some sort of Christian counselor. We have a ministry that we partner with called His Story. I would highly encourage you to seek that out. Married, single, whatever. I would. It just brings a lot of health and be able to get things out, have a second opinion. Well, we were meeting with this counselor, and one time we were kind of in this point of tension, and one of the skills that he taught us was to repeat back to the other person what you heard them say. Okay, so it was this. We tried it. We would have time on the couch, right? We both sit down. Okay, now you talk. She would talk, and okay, this is what I heard you say, right? And I would say it, and more times than not, she'd look at me and go, no, that's not what I said. Here's what I said. I'm like, okay, let's try it again. And so I would listen, right? Okay, this is what I heard you say. This, right? It's just back and forth, back and forth. I mean, we're talking over an hour on sitting on a couch to create understanding. It was a practice that we still even do today. It's a way to seek to understand first, to be understood. And what we found most of the time when at early stages in our relationship was, after much time of talking and listening, was that there were deeper issues at play of most of the time of our childhood. And that rose insecurities and poked and past scars, our actions that had nothing to do with what happened, but because the hurt was still so fresh of our past, it created us or allowed us to interpret things differently than they actually were. I remember one of the times when we just got married, and she had spilled something. We were somewhere, and she spilled a drink somewhere, and I acted just in annoyance. I kind of reacted in annoyance. I was like, "Oh, come on," like that. And she just got silent and then walked away. And I was like, what just happened? Right? And so it was later, I was like, hey, what happened? And well, come to find out that one of her past stepdads had an anger problem. And because she was pretty clumsy as a young child, that she would spill and break things. And so when I reacted in that way, it brought back the emotional scarring of her past. And so now that I know that at the Polsgrove household, when anything is spilled or broken, it's a time to rejoice, right? We go to the opposite extreme. When one of my kids spills something or it's like, oh, there we go, let's clean it up. It's like, I go to the opposite extreme. Why? And because it's understanding the other person and acting in accordance because you love them. And I would say that I think oftentimes the greatest way to love someone is to seek to understand them. The greatest way to love someone is to seek to first understand them. James goes on to write, and James, in his letter to Christians all over, he says, you must be quick to listen. Understand this, brother and sister. You must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. So get rid of all filth and evil in our lives, and humbly accept the word God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save your souls. James, what word is that? What word is it? What word have you given us to save our relationships, to create health within our church, to create a sense of joy in our family? Well, what is that? Well, I just said it. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And what I love about Jesus is that he doesn't ask us to do anything of us that he hasn't modeled himself. He modeled that. He modeled that he came to make things right. He didn't seek to be right. Jesus could have showed up and just shut down all the arguments like he did with the Pharisees. He could have showed up and told us we were all stupid and we didn't know anything and gave all these proofs and left and walked away justified. But yet, Jesus wasn't seeking the immediate gratification of being right. He was seeking to accomplish the long-term mission of eternal security. And Jesus goes to the cross. He dies for our sins and mine and yours to give us the ability to make things right in the eyes of God. Jesus modeled this. And here's the reality of it is, Jesus still wants things to be right now. He still wants things to be right in your life. And so he's patient with us. He's slow with us, isn't he? He's patient to bring us into the person that he wants us to be. I imagine you and I can both look back, and you know this, look back 5, 10, 15 years ago, right? And we would be embarrassed of how we thought and how we behaved. Think back to when, in your 20s, when you wanted nothing to do with Jesus. Your life resembled nothing of him. And at that moment, he could have given a consequence that far out, could have wiped us out from ever repenting back to him. But yet, he was patient, he was slow. Think back to your relationships in your family. Look at the healing that you have now. It wasn't always like that. He was slow, he was patient. Think back to the words that you said when you were younger. Think back to just 5, 10 things that you believed, and you look back now and you think, that was so stupid. Yeah, Jesus knew it was stupid then, but he was patient, he was slow with you. Because he loves you. He's patient, he's slow. I love what it says in 2 Peter. The Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some of you think. No, he is being patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed, but wants everyone to repent. Oftentimes, and we may win the argument, but lose the relationship. Don't win the argument, but lose the relationship. Parents, you may lecture your kids for 20 minutes, but in the end, lose their willingness to come to you with a problem or issue. You may seek to win an argument with a coworker or a friend, but in the end, you're losing the influence that you have with them, that you've built with them. You may seek to win an argument with a spouse, but lose the intimacy. You may seek to win an argument with a family member, or a mother, or father, or grandmother, but in the end, you've lost the joy that very well could be present for years to come in family gatherings. Don't win the argument, but lose the relationship. Don't seek to be right, but really choose to make things right. And it starts with seeking to understand before we can be understood. And some of you right now, I know this, you're thinking to yourself, but Garrison, I don't need to hear this. Like, I'm not the one who needs to hear it. My mother needs to hear this message. She's the one who needs to. Garrison, I don't need to hear this. My children need to hear this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to have them listen to this. And some of you are thinking, well, Garrison, I don't need to hear this, but my friends at work, my boss needs to hear this. She's the one who always gets angry. If they wouldn't get angry, right? Here's it is, right? If they wouldn't get angry, then I wouldn't get angry, right? Here's the thing. Listen, don't be a victim. Don't be helpless. Scripture says, what does it say at the beginning? It says, who? You must be quick to listen, slow to speak. You. He's addressing you. You take the initiative. You model what it looks like to seek to understand somebody. You take the first step in making things right. Not charging ahead and getting loud and getting aggressive in order to be right. Seek to make things right. See, if we want success in our relationships, listen, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. You want to influence your coworkers. You want quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. You want success and joy in your family. You want that to be created. Listen, it starts with you being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And you know this, being right is overrated. It is. Because in the end, you may win the battle, but you're a lonely champion. You don't want to be right. You want things to be right, relationships to be right. And I guarantee if we begin to model this of being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, we'll get what we ultimately want, to be close with those we love. Because being close with those we love is far better than living with the self-righteous thought of, I'm right. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry.